Hello, hello, hello. Welcome back to my studio. I'm so happy that you are joining us for this live stream today on this very hot July afternoon. I don't know where you are, but where I am, it is hot. So hopefully that you get some painting time indoors with some air conditioning and are having a great time. So a lot of people have a hard time knowing when they're just starting out what materials and supplies do they need to oil paint. There's a lot out there, and there's a lot of information out there that, having to weed through it all is almost impossible, honestly. So here I am to tell you my favorite things that I use in my studio every day, tried and true, professional grade. And you're in it for the long haul if you're going to get these materials. But honestly, if you want to get good at the craft, you need quality materials. You can go with lesser quality things for sure, especially if you don't want to get super great. But I do recommend getting the best quality you can for the price point that you have. Okay, so first things first is, of course, the oil paint itself, right? Come over with me, and I have laid out my entire palette for you guys to see. Here we go. Here is my palette with all of my paints right here ready to go. Remember, you have a PDF download. I have all of these paints listed, and I just want to kind of go through them one by one so that you get an idea of why I have these on my palette. Okay, first one, lead white. I know the word lead has some bad feelings around it, but lead, honestly, in paint is not going to be toxic unless you're sanding your painting, which I don't recommend. But when it's in paint form, it is bonded with that paint. It is not going anywhere near your lungs, I promise. And it's also the absolute strongest paint film that you can make. So when you're mixing white with any other color, you are creating a very strong, solid paint film. So lead white is my absolute go-to. Cad lemon. So you can kind of see here that let's see if I can slightly tip this without my paints falling. Yeah, there they go. You can see that I have my paints lined up from light through kind of the spectrum of the rainbow to dark. That's how I like to arrange my palette. Everyone is kind of different. Some people like to have white right in the middle so that they can kind of judge however it is that they do it. I don't know, but this works for me. So I have my yellows here, my reds, my green, blues, and then my darks here. And these colors here, my white and then my darks here, are my neutrals. Those are going to neutralize all of the very, very bright pigments that are in between. So I like cadmium lemon. Some people like cad yellow. I find that cad lemon here by Gamblin, it's just a little bit more subtle or less punchy. I find it works in a lot more situations than cad yellow does. Gamblin yellow ochre, great quality yellow ochre. This is Rublev. You can see that it's pretty old. Orange molybdate. The thing with all of these Rublev colors is that they are pricey. These are tippy top of the line paints, but they will last you forever. I mean, you can kind of see from these tubes here that they are old, but they're just the quality paints that I'm looking for in my work. Honestly, they're easy to work with. They're easy to mix. They are, good pigments and just fantastic paints, and no additives. It's just oil and pigment in these paints. I'm not entirely sure if Gamblin has additives, but they are also high quality, great paints. This is alizarin permanent. We have sap green. Greens are kind of hard to mix. So I do like to at least have sap green on my palette, especially if I'm plein air painting, because it's easier to mix different greens out of this green than it is out of a yellow and a blue. So I do prefer to at least have one green on my palette when I'm painting. This is lazurite. So lazurite is probably not a pigment that you've heard of. It's again by Rublev, but it is a beautiful, subtle, gorgeous blue that is really great for flesh tones. So if you paint a lot of portraits, lazurite is a fantastic option for you. I did get these out of order. So cobalt actually comes before lazurite on my palette at least. So cobalt blue here, great for skies. And then lazurite again, and then ultramarine, really great all around blue. And then of course our neutrals, raw umber. I like raw umber. It's a bit less red than a lot of browns can be. And then Van Dyke brown. Van Dyke brown is a really dark, you can see it up here. It looks black, but when it's mixed with white, it turns into the most beautiful neutral gray that I haven't been able to get with any other black. A lot of the blacks tend to turn a bit blue when mixed with white. And then of course that blue tone will carry into any other mixtures that you mix with black. And some people like to use like ivory black mixed with yellow and get their greens, because black tends to lean more blue. So it's an option, but I tend to like just the very neutral Van Dyke brown, and it has to be Gamblin. Other brands just have not had the same effect of that very neutral gray. And then this is walnut oil gel. I do prefer walnut over linseed oil, but the great thing about this is that it's my medium in kind of paste form, gel form. And so I don't have to have a little cup on, clipped onto the corner of my palette. And, if it gets knocked over, then obviously the oil goes everywhere. Hate to have that. This keeps it right on my palette, easy to go, easy to reach, no problem, easy to pack. And it's a really great option. The substrate that makes it a gel has no effect on your paint. So I highly recommend this oleo gel. It does come in linseed and walnut, and I do prefer walnut. Linseed, if you have any experience with painting, you kind of get a feel for your paints. And linseed tends to be a bit grittier than oil. So there are than walnut, excuse me. So there are walnut-based oil paints, and it is recommended that you use the medium that your paints are based on. These are all based on linseed, except for this. This is walnut, my white. But I do prefer to mix with walnut because it's just smoother. It's more buttery. And linseed has a bit of a grit to it. It's the only way I can describe it. And the more you paint, the more you kind of pick up on those things. So here is my palette. And of course, along the way, if you have any questions, I highly recommend that you ask them, and I will answer them as I can, as I kind of look at the screen and, get a sense of what the questions are. So from there, we have our paints, and I've kind of written in the PDF what the whole base of my palette here is, and most palettes. It's your primary colors. You have yellow, red, blue, and then your neutrals to alter those colors. And then of course I had my green here as well. But that is the whole basis, is my primary colors, and then I can alter them lighter or darker. The more saturated, the more pure I'm going to keep these colors. But if I want to kind of bring them down, bring them less saturated, then I'm going to mix them with my neutrals. Okay, so that covers paint. Brushes. There are so many options for brushes, and it can become extremely overwhelming. I have these just as an example, but oh my goodness, I wish I could show you all of my brushes. This is just a handful. I have these, and then I have a whole tin full, bucket full of other brushes as well. But these will kind of give us an idea of what's available. So many different sizes, so many different options in terms of hair options, right? So we have, this is a bristle. These are mongoose synthetics, synthetic mongoose. This is also a bristle, and these are synthetics, bristle, synthetic. I tend to lean towards synthetic myself. Some people like bristles. They tend to need more paint in order to get the coverage that you need onto the canvas, which is totally fine. Some people really like to slather on the paint. I'm a little more reserved in my paint use. I do more washy type stuff, and so I prefer my synthetics. These are my all-time favorites. They're by Tyrrell, they're Legion, the Legion series, and just a really great all-around brush that I use every day. The size that I tend to use, I'm going to try and work as big of a brush as I can for the moment that I'm in the painting. So if I'm just starting out, I'm going to reach for my larger ones, depending on the size of my canvas. So for something like this is going to be plenty big. I'm still able to kind of get some washes done, but maybe carve out a few shapes. But as I progress in the painting, I'm going to drop down to something maybe of this size. And every brand is different in how they size their brushes. So you just kind of have to get familiar, unfortunately, with any brands that you do end up getting. My two favorites are Rosemary and Company. This is a Rosemary. This is their Evergreen line, really great synthetic line. And then, like I mentioned, Tyrrell. My Tyrrell Legions are my workhorses for sure. There are different sizes and there are different shapes, of course, as you can see. These are my favorite shapes. This is called filbert. And you can see that it's kind of rounded around the edges here. So some people really like flats because they can get sharp, crisp lines. This is going to be far more subtle lines and rounded and, able to blend things a bit easier than you will with this flat. There are rounds. You can get huge rounds, but I've never understood the point of those. If you understand it, great. I hope it works for you. This is a size 0 in Rosemary. And I use this for very, very fine detail work. This is kind of my last brush that I'll be using on a painting. And then if I am going to sign the work, I'll probably reach for something like this or maybe even a little smaller. This is called an Egbert. You can see that it looks like a filbert, but it's a lot longer. So obviously this is a bigger overall brush, but the bristles are just a lot longer, the brush head here. And so some people really like to use these. I find them a little clumsy for my work, but you can kind of get a spring action through your painting that you can't really as much with something like this. The strokes are probably going to be a bit shorter, and this is probably going to be able to get a bit longer strokes. And then fan brushes. There we go. There's a fan brush. I use mostly fan brushes for my drawings. I will not back like my charcoal. if I need to kind of lighten my charcoal. But some people really like these for painting for like grasses and such. I've never found that I need it for my work, but still a really great option if it's something that will work for you. So those are a bunch of different shapes available. This is my scrubby brush. I will just kind of beat this thing into death on a painting if I'm doing like large washes and whatever. And I will also use this to tone my canvas because obviously it is beat down. It is needing a lot of help in order to be, one of my quality brushes. It's not only worn down the brush size, you can kind of see here just how worn down the brush is. But then it's great to just, do a bunch of washes and be rough with it. I don't have to worry about how I'm treating this brush, which is great to have on hand sometimes. And you can kind of see like this is a little flat. If you can see that, it's teeny, teeny, tiny. And this is one of the smallest flats I didn't even know I had until I saw it today, getting prepared for this. I said, holy moly, I've never seen a little brush like that before. I've never used it, but you could definitely get some really fine work in here, especially if you were doing like perspective buildings or something. You could get some really crisp, clean lines with something like this. So, brushes. It's all down to personal preference in terms of brush hair, brush length, brush size, etc. But hopefully that kind of gives you a guide as to what I use and why I use what I use. So that when you are at that art store, you can have a more informed way of choosing what it is that you want to use. Over here, this is my mineral spirits container. Mineral spirits is the widely preferred solvent for oil paint. You can kind of see in here, there's my spirits. And then this has, so not only does it have the clips on the outside to keep it tightly sealed, it has this on the inside where you will, when this is obviously submerged in my mineral spirits, I'll wash it here to get all of the pigment, or as much pigment as I can, out of my brush. The pigment falls down to the bottom here, and then I'm left with clean mineral spirits on top to continue washing my brush with. It is recommended that you always keep your mineral spirits tightly, closed when not in use, because it's not the best for health reasons. Always use it in a ventilated space as well, and definitely not around children. One of the reasons why I can't paint as much as I used to is because I have 2 small kids, and so I can't have them around here. There are ways to paint solvent-free, or in other words, without mineral spirits, but I have never really been able to pick those up as well. But spike oil is a heavy-duty solvent-like natural option if you want to look into that. And then I have my tube wringer here. This is a really great option for obviously your paints. Get every last drip of paint out of each tube. And you can see how well loved this thing has been. Okay. That kind of covers, I forgot my palette knife. This is one of your best friends for mixing paint. This is my favorite shape. There are a bunch of different shapes available. I like this one because it's long. I do all of my mixing here. I don't know if you can kind of see the scratches on the palette knife itself that kind of indicate exactly where my mixing is occurring. It's really clean here, but really scratched up here. So I like that. I have a bit of a bounce here, really good surface area here to mix on. And it's a really great friend. But these do wear down. Eventually, this will snap. I've had that happen more times than not, that this joint right here will break. And so then you have to buy a new one. But they last a really long time. There's no particular brand that I recommend because they're all pretty good quality. Nothing that stands out too much. So, and my setup here, my Plein kit, this is a kit that is by Edge Pro. It's a little pricey. A lot of Plein kits are, but it has everything I need. It has obviously a place to put my painting, my canvas. It has my palette. Has these trays to put my brushes and my spirits on the side. This is all magnetic, so I can just put my palette knife there. I've put magnets in the bottom of my spirits jar so that stays there. And it's really great. And then the palette is also magnetic so that when I pack it up, no matter what way it's packed, it will stay in place. So really, really great setup there. I really enjoy this overall kit, but like I said, it can be somewhat expensive. But they have a bunch of different options now. I got mine when they were still a pretty new brand. They have a bunch of options that are really great. And this just sits on a tripod, and so I can pack this whole thing up, put it in a backpack, and I'm away painting. Easy peasy, especially if I'm teaching a workshop. This is the absolute easiest way to do it. Okay, and then this is my mahl stick. Mahl sticks are great for not touching the painting while you're, with your hand while you're painting. I can get a really good distance away from the painting instead of having to try and balance this way, with my pinky on there. This gives a lot more support to my palm, and I'm able to get some really good strokes like that. Okay, it looks like we have some questions. Let's take a look at those. Give me just a moment. Okay. Rain asks, he's an experienced acrylic painter. Fantastic. Will it be difficult to transition to oil? Great question, Rain. So I don't have a whole lot of experience with acrylics. Not that, they are a whole lot. I just prefer oil for a lot of different reasons. Acrylics are great for very, great things in terms of like dry time. Easy peasy. You can whip out a painting within a day, no problem. Oils, it takes, sometimes weeks, sometimes months to get a painting. But can you transition to oil? Yeah, if you're patient. That's really what it comes down to. If you have the patience to allow your oil painting to dry, at least to the touch overnight before you come back to it, absolutely. And I think that you'll find that with oil, that you're able to get kind of deeper and more nuanced, subtle transitions and layers, and all of these things stacking up that you can't really get as much with acrylics. Again, I haven't had a whole lot of experience with acrylics. I know that there all are different mediums that you can use and such, and I know that at least from when I have used acrylics, they've come a long way in terms of what you have available to you. But for an experienced oil painter, I will say that there is a feeling to an oil painting that I haven't seen in an acrylic painting. So yes, you can do it, but you have to be patient. Okay, Carly asks, do oil paints expire? Yes, they do. So what will happen is that the paint is made up of pigment and oil, right? And so if you mix those together, you grind them together and they become one. What will happen eventually in the tube is that they'll separate again. What you can do if you don't have anything else other than pigment and oil in your paint is you can regrind them, easy peasy, if you have a grinder, But what happens with a lot of like cheaper paints is that they have a lot of additives in them, and so they can go rancid. What the additives are typically are stabilizers, so that they don't go rancid, so they don't go bad. But they will develop like a smell. You'll know when your paint is bad, and so those you can't regrind, unfortunately. So it feels like you're just kind of wasting money, right? If you don't get through the whole tube, and there are some pigments that you just can't get through the whole tube quickly. Like I showed you, my paints there, my pigments, my rublibs especially, they last a long time. So I need something that I can come back to for years, have that tube readily available. And that's why Rublev is such a quality paint maker, because they only have those two ingredients, your pigment and your oil. And so if my paints do separate, I can get all of the paint out of the tube, regrind it with some more oil, and then I will just retube it. No problem. And where I'm spending, like with Lazurite, it's over $100 a tube. I don't use that much. Even when I am painting portraiture a lot, I just don't use that much. So it will last years and years and years. So yeah, that's one of the reasons why I recommend using a quality paint maker, reputable paint brand like Gamblin or Rublev. Okay, and Carly also asks, how do I mix and blend colors effectively? Great question. So we, next month, August 21st, I believe, we are going to be having an all about paint mixing live stream. So keep in tune with that. It's so obviously basic understanding of how to mix your paints. So tune back in for that, please, Carly, so that you can kind of see these paints in action. I don't think we're going to get to it today. I only have a limited time with you guys every time that I'm on here, but it's going to be obviously live streamed and recorded, so you'll be able to see. And so blending, that's kind of a different beast too. If you go back to one of my first live streams, I have a series where I painted this oil painting, and you can see exactly how I blended things, how I turned these forms, and you can kind of get a feel for what it is that, how to handle oil paints, honestly. Really great resource for that. But maybe in the future we can record another painting or that is focused solely on that. So great question, Carly. Tune back in is my advice. Okay, Nora says, thanks for doing this. What type of palette do you use? Is it glass or plastic? Coming right up, Nora. What are your thoughts on gray toned palette paper? Okay, so let's see. Where am I in my notes? We covered paint. We covered brushes. We covered supports. We'll get to in just a moment. Let's cover palettes. Okay, I have here, this one is a glass palette. It came with my easel, and it also came with this acrylic one. This one I use to paint with every day because it is easy to mix on, easy to clean up. The cleanup is the most important thing to me because sometimes paint dries on here and I need this clean mixing area. And so if I need to be able to scrape off that paint easily, quickly, and get going. This one cleans up less easily, but it's a lot lighter weight. So in the PDF printout, I do kind of explain that the glass tends to be a lot heavier. So you're not going to want to be holding this while you're painting. That's why this setup is great, because I get to just set it in there and not have to worry about it, not straining myself too much to actually, work on my painting. But acrylic is great for traveling because it's lightweight. Okay, this is my wood palette. And let's change camera angles so you can see. Just a sec. Katie, if you can change that camera. Okay, here we go. So this is my handheld wood palette. Love this thing. I made this myself. It's built up this beautiful neutral gray patina. You can see exactly where I'm mixing up here. My colors go here, and back here you can see the counterweight on this side, so that when I'm holding it, this, where it has all of my paint, is going to get really heavy. So this counterweight will hold everything in place so that there's less strain on my arm, on my hand, and everything. And then I can put my brushes here, ready to go, and I just pick them up, mix, 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 step up to my painting, and away I go. This is obviously the more traditional option for a palette. I love this thing, but I don't use it a whole lot anymore because I have my Plein kit that is just a lot easier for what I'm doing right now. I'm working on smaller things, so I don't need a big palette like this usually. But if I were working on something bigger, I would absolutely be using this. But gray palette paper is, I think, a great option. It's not a problem to me. I know that they do have some that you have the thumb hole in and you can, hold it. Great. It's great for cleanup. So I don't think that it's a problem at all. I don't have any myself, just because I'm painting all the time, right? And so I don't need disposable anything, because I don't generally have a whole lot of dried paints or things that I need to just kind of throw away. But yeah, I think it's a great option. No problem at all. I've never had any issues with it when I've taught people that have used it. So yeah, it's a great cheap option too. So, okay, Teddy asks, is it difficult to fix mistakes in oil painting? No, that's one of the great things about oil paint is it's super easy. You just add more paint. And, of course, there are different paints that are more transparent, more opaque. And so you will have to, by chance, maybe, if you're using a more transparent paint on top of a more opaque paint, you might have to kind of build up the layers in order to cover up the mistake. But it's not difficult to just cover it up. And what you will probably end up doing is kind of generalizing the area that was a mistake a little bit, and then recarving it out to be more specific to what the actual correct drawing is. I hope that makes sense. So you'll just be adding more thick paint, and then you can kind of start over with your shape making and getting your proportions correct and getting your gesture correct. And then you can, from there, add more information, et cetera, et cetera. So it's actually a great medium for if you have a mistake or you decide to change something, you decide to move something. It's an option. It's a really great option. And then, of course, with all of those layers that, were technically mistakes, you're adding more layers of bouncing light within the paint layers. So you get that rich, deep, kind of what oil painting is known for. You stand in front of an oil painting and you just kind of get sucked into all of that bouncing light in between each of the layers. It just feels really rich. So Yeah, great question. Okay, let me see if I'm missing. Oh, I wanted to talk to you guys about different canvas options. There are a few different options, and I'll tell you what I prefer. This one is cotton. It is the most widely available. You can get it in any arts and crafts store. Um, it's cheap. It's fine. I'll tell you that it's fine. Um, but in terms of longevity, not your best option. So this is on stretcher bars, as you can see there. I have this for a very specific project that I'm working on. I'm not going to use the canvas itself. I'm going to actually paste paper on top of this and draw on that paper. But it's a great support. So I don't. If you want to use cotton, by all means, go ahead. It's great as in terms of cost efficiency, but I do prefer linen. Linen has just a better tooth. It's going to be more durable and a lot better, usually in terms of what they're priming with. This is an oil primed linen. And so when you paint on this, the oil is not going to what's called sink in as much as it would on the cotton, because cotton is usually primed with gesso. Gesso is an acrylic base, and so it will sink in. It will kind of suck in all of the oil from your paint layers, so that it's harder to actually judge your values when everything is kind of dried into the canvas itself. Sinking in is a huge problem for oil painting. I get asked that a lot, the problems that are associated with sinking in. And there are whole like Facebook groups devoted to just that problem. That they're painting groups, but time and time again, people will ask about sinking in issues. So I do not recommend gesso as a primer. You can use it. People have very successfully. I've never gotten a hang of it. You do have to use a lot more paint, in my experience, than you would with an oil primed. Or my favorite is lead primed. I have made these panels myself. And so it is raw linen wrapped around this birch with rabbit skin glue and then double lead primed on top. And like I said, lead is a great film, paint film. It's really strong, really durable. So it's not going to expand and contract like other primers would. And it's just a fantastic paint to use. So that's what I prefer. I do prefer portrait grade linen to paint on. That's what this is. But some people prefer more grit in their linen, more tooth, as it's called. And they just have to use more paint to actually cover the canvas. It just takes more paint that they can layer onto the canvas. But like I said, I work pretty washy, and so I like a more smooth surface to work on. Okay, so hopefully that answers any questions. I would recommend painting on a panel, especially for smaller things, and kind of shying away from anything stretched that's under 48 inches, if you can. And maybe one day in the future, I'll teach you guys how to actually stretch canvas. But they are, like I said, readily available at the arts and crafts store. The cotton is, at least. It's harder to get stretched canvas from a panel maker. Possible, but harder. Okay, I want to make sure that I haven't missed anything. Like I said, please get the PDF download. I have a lot of notes in there that hopefully I've expanded here more to kind of give you some context about what I actually mean. Oh, there is another option but I don't have my example with me. But you can paint on polyester, actually. If you know Graydon Parrish's work, he paints on polyester, from my understanding, quite a lot. And the advantage of polyester is that it's a synthetic material. Ideally, it'll last a long time. We don't have, the time since it was invented to know that for sure. But the idea is, it'll last. And I tried it once. I didn't love it, but it is an option. If you prepare the polyester properly, you can actually paint on it. It is cheaper than linen, and seems to be a better option than cotton, but not very widely used. So there you go. But I thought I'd include it just in case, because some people might want to give it a go. Okay, so we covered paint, brushes, supports, all the canvas options, and palette. Okay, that will get you going in terms of oil painting. I also have in my kit, I have some paper towels, really great to have on hand. Try to keep everything clean. Wipe off your brushes, palette knife, whatever. I also keep tape on hand, just in case I need to tape up some loose canvas, whatever. It's a really great handy thing. And I also keep on hand a small mirror that I can check my shapes with. I can, look at my piece upside down or backwards or whatever. Just gives me a fresh eye. A really great little tool to have on hand. And that all goes into my backpack here. This is actually for a photographer. It's a photographer's backpack, but it's been awesome for my painting kit because it holds a tripod up here. And then I pack clips. Clips are also great. Same thing as tape. I just pack all of my paint and such in here. My panels are all in here. And then this holds my actual plein air easel. This is made for a computer, a laptop. And so it just slips right in and I'm ready to go. It's an awesome little system. I know that not everyone is going to be plein air painting, but having something that is condensed, that you can easily clean up, that is all in one place, is a huge win, honestly, when it comes to oil painting, because you can accumulate a lot of stuff. And so if you have too much or, things kind of everywhere, you're always looking for the thing that isn't there, it seems. So yeah, I have everything I need there. And then everything that you see back here is just other supplies that I need occasionally. Okay, Teddy asks, how do you finish a painting? I'm going to refer you back to the painting that I did for the live streams. When we very first started these live streams, I took you through start to finish on this painting. So you can kind of get a feel for what finishing a painting is. And that might mean different things to different people, but that's what I called finishing. When I felt the form, when it said everything that it needed to say in terms of depth, colors, values, form, all of that, then I called this one done. So go back and watch those live streams. And yeah, I'll maybe in the future take you through another painting so that now that you have all of this new knowledge, that we've been covering the past few months, we can come back and go through this again and you can see everything in action. But hopefully those live streams kind of help you along your way. Okay, any other questions? These were great questions, by the way. Thank you so much for asking. If you have any other questions, please let me know. Even after the live stream, please let me know if you have any questions. And of course, this is going to be recorded on the Artist Academy website, where you can access the other ones in the back catalog, and all the PDFs that go along with that as well. Okay. If that is it, then thank you so much for joining us. I appreciate you being here, and come back in August 21st. We will be here and we will talk all about color and mixing and how to get the colors that you want in your painting. And it's part of a larger challenge as well through Artist Academy. So be aware of that, kind of keep that in mind. And kind of keep up with what's going on with Artist Academy. They're doing an awesome job. And so I'm so happy to be here and a part of it. And thank you so much for tuning in. Have a good day.